and go home. Okay, firefighting emergency support function. In this area, it's Tampa Fire, Hillsborough County Fire Rescue, Temple Terrace, and Plant City. Many of you guys might, or men and women might end up working for these departments. They are involved in a lot of the emergency support functions. They not only do this, they do hazardous material incidents, evacuation of citizens who need special, who have special needs, warning systems, medical emergencies. What happens if you call 911 during an emergency? We switch to a different dispatching protocol if there's an emergency. If you call up because you have ankle pain and you want a second opinion or low back pain for 3 years, you're not going to get an ambulance on a day when there's a true mass casualty. It's not going to happen. Any other day, if any of you work for any of the transport agencies now, you know that we're written in statute under transport. That's what we do. But on days when there are special events, that's not going to happen. Extrication and other emergencies which require immediate access. Hurricane came through, there's people in a car, it's dangling off a bridge, you know, those kind of things. The fire department has a whole lot of support functions that they have to do, and my job at the EOC is to support them, get them what they need if they don't have it. They're pretty well organized though. Okay, information and planning, that's one of the things we're doing now, a disaster drill. As people that are going to, as providers, you're going to be providing care in this community, and you're going to need to make sure you know what your role is, your official role, and then what's your private role. You know, as a citizen, what do you need to do? I'll talk about that in a minute. We have continuous planning, and then during the disaster operations, we'll have the planners in the emergency operations center there to support you. Here's a problem we did not anticipate. How are we going to fix this? What resources do we have? Where can we get what we need? That's our job, to do that for you while you're out there doing your job. Mass care and human services. This is not necessarily medical. This is these are the shelters, the Red Cross shelters where people have to evacuate. Places where we're going to, special needs shelters where we're going to put people that are in assisted living facilities that need a little bit of help. And perhaps going door to door after the fact in communities to see if everybody's okay. So there's a lot of people that work on this, mass care and human services. This combined effort between law enforcement, the fire department, and various, there's a lot of faith-based organizations that participate in this. There's a lot of not-for-profits that participate in this. And that needs to be coordinated, otherwise they're all going to the same community, knocking on the same doors over and over and over again. Okay, resource support, that's what we'll be doing at the EOC. Every community needs the central place that you can call if you need assistance, if you need help. The water main just broke at the hospital. We need to evacuate this wing. There's no beds in this hospital. Take them to, where can we take them? Health and medical, ESF8, that's actually who I am. I'm the medical director for mass casualty. I sit there with the health department. In a mass casualty incident, it's me. I'm bartering with the hospitals, I'm looking for beds, I'm looking for beds in other communities. If you have special needs as the transport officer, that can't be met, I need to make sure that you have all the information you need so these patients are going where they need to go. If Tampa General is overwhelmed, we're going to St. Joe's. If St. Joe's is overwhelmed, we're going to Bayfront and Lakeland. You know, I need to have that information for you so you don't have to make 7 phone calls. If we have a hurricane in this area, one of the things that was most notable when was it in 2003 or 2004, where we thought we were going to get hit in Tampa, and then the hurricane took a right-hand turn and hit Port Charlotte and just knocked them all out. And we all wanted to go down there and volunteer, but there was no mechanism to do that. There was no medical reserve corps in this area at that time. Now there is. What you saw down there was just absolute devastation, and the people that were working in the hospitals knew that their homes and maybe their families were also affected. How do we cover for that, and how do we go into the next area and help those people that need it, and how do we get that help for ourselves when we need it, because we're just totally obliterated. Our hospitals are damaged. There's actually a big tabletop exercise in our community in April or May that's dealing just with that, mass evacuations, in case we get hit the way Homestead did with Andrew. So those communications are in place. You know, I'm going through this pretty fast, and there's going to be a lot of chaos, but the bottom line is wherever you end up when you grow up, whenever you graduate, wherever you end up working, you'll be part of a system that has to answer these same questions. And they're going to organize them like this, but their answers might be different because they don't have Perhaps they don't have public service fire rescue. So who's their hazmat team? Well, it may be a group of volunteer firefighters, or it may be a group of people from the local hospital. Or they may have to bring in the Coast Guard or somebody that has an organized team. But they have an answer to these same questions. You just have to know what the answer is. And if they don't have an answer, then you need to think about whether you want to live there. Or if you want to find answers to those questions. Okay, search and rescue, primarily in our area, it's fire rescue. But it's a coordinated effort. We have teams that go out right after an event, after a hurricane or a tropical storm event, called disaster assessment teams, and they actually confiscate all the local helicopters that are still functional and go up and just kind of go look over the whole area and see what areas need immediate attention, see if there's anything that needs to be done now, and do an assessment so that we can bring everything back online. Hazmat in this area, it is the fire departments. In Pinellas County, they depend, I think, a whole lot on the Coast Guard to help with them with that. And McDill used to have an active hazmat team, but they've turned over their deployment a lot, so I'm not sure how functional they are right now. They handle their own. Food and water. After a disaster, where do you get food and water? This is where our health-based and nonprofit groups really get involved in our area. Procurement, distribution plans are in place. If this community is really affected, we're going to go to these churches in these areas and we're going to distribute food and water. We actually practice that as well. They're called pods, points of distribution. In our area, it's ICE, and sometimes it's interesting if you're volunteering in those areas. I did a little volunteering down south, and you're handing out ICE and you're looking at this person, and their hair on the back of your neck stands up, and that probably mental health services would be a good idea too, because these people were way over the edge. And that's another thing that comes under ESF 8, that is, we are going to have some mental health people here for the drill. There's always a lot of worried well, or people that are hysterical because they can't find their family members, or they've just lost everything and they've totally lost their minds. So their mental health support with water and ice is a good idea. Okay, energy. When we walked out for our hurricane up, and I have a picture of the EOC, we have the TECO people with us, we have the water people with us, we have Public Works with us, because they have response teams that are going to go hit hot spots after the effect. And we have a large metropolitan area. You may not have that in a smaller metropolitan area, but what you do have are mutual aid agreements, so people are going to come in and provide those services for you or help you with that. And there should be a plan in place, and it should be practiced. Because I can't tell you, when New Orleans got hammered, they had a great hurricane plan. It was sitting on a shelf. And I know they had a plan because our guys went down and practiced that plan with them a couple of years before. It was a good plan, but guess what? Everybody knew about that plan. Beat feet. There was nobody there that followed their plan. Don't get me started. Okay, military support. This is actually, for us, intermittently a big contingent of people at McDill. Unfortunately, they've been deployed frequently, so that it turns over. And we try, actually, they're very stressed, and their resources are stressed now, so we don't depend on them. But when they're available, they're excellent help. They help with security and medical care, transportation. Actually, part of our evacuation program, if we have large numbers of wounded, we're part of our community is part of the NDMS, National Disaster Medical Support System, and they will survey all the hospitals in the southeast and then in the whole country to see what kind of beds we need. If we'd have 5,000 people with burns, the state of Florida can't support that many. They will come and transport them out for us to hospitals in Baltimore and Cincinnati and Seattle. So that is in place, and we've practiced that as well. As a matter of fact, they helped us pull the patients in for the Haitian medical refugees. They helped us with that, with the bed counts in the area. Most of those we were absorbing locally, but we did have to go outside of our area. Public information. Do you remember when there was an anthrax scare on the East Coast and everybody was totally freaked out? Because the FBI and the local law enforcement and the health department were all saying different stuff. And it was getting a little confusing. The CDC would say one thing and the local health department would say something else, and everybody was totally freaked out. It is very important to have timely, reliable, and consistent information. We have joint information, a joint information control point, and we've practiced that as well. We get to practice it for Super Bowl and Gasparilla and all the other stuff that happens here. We have joint information, and we put everything out. Every single department has a representative there, so we're all on the same sheet of music, and so we all have the same information. It does a number of things. One is it gives people the right information, and two, it eliminates the confusion and the distrust in the community when everybody's saying the same thing. So it centralizes that information function. That's really important in a large urban area. You may only have one person if you're in a small community. That makes life a lot easier. Okay, volunteers and donations. I showed you that picture. People show up with or without credentials. We had people showing up saying they were doctors who were not doctors. We had people showing up saying that they had XYZ, that they were law enforcement, and they were not. That's why it's important to make sure that you're part of a system like the Medical Reserve Corps. So if you want to volunteer, you got a picture ID. We've done a background check. You know, you're deployed by us. When we deploy, you have disability and liability, and you can work at a hospital that we deploy you to, even though you don't have privileges there. So it really is a good way to address the need for manpower in alternative care areas. But the effective reception and distribution of donated relief stuff is a problem, but also all the volunteers that flood into the area that say that they are perhaps, you know, somebody that they're not, or they might be. There's just no way to know. I'm not going to let somebody that comes into the room and says, hey, I'm a doctor from Idaho, you know, can I take care of you? You know, I want to see a little more than that. Law enforcement and security, there's never going to be enough cops. There's never going to be enough law enforcement, so you have to have plans. The big hospitals have plans to lock down. The fire marshal's not happy about that. But that's, you know, that's the way it is. Tampa General has 82 doors to the outside world. They don't have 82 security guards. So we have to have a way to lock down. If a contaminated event happens at the port, we not only lock down our doors, we shut off our ventilation, because, I mean, there's pros and cons for being on an island with a hospital. The pros are that if the bridge goes, you got to swim to get there, and you're already decontaminated. But the cons are that it can be underwater. It's right on the coast. It's not the greatest place for a hospital. It's a great hospital, but there's, you know, that's where it's a beautiful setting. What can I say? Okay, and the last but not least, animal protection. You know, this was a big problem after the hurricane, after Katrina. With dogs and horses and cows, but this is a really big deal that people go into shelters. Some people will not evacuate their homes because they can't take their pets. A lot of the shelters now are allowing pets, and we're trying to get people to be responsible enough to have those carrier things for their animals, because you can't just let them run around. Some people are allergic to them. Some of them get excited and bite people. That's, you know, that all sucks. So you really have to, you know, have that well organized. And these guys are working on it for us because people simply would not leave their animals. So this is the Emergency Operations Center at Hillsborough County, which is where we go for hurricane evacuations. This is a staff that is a skeletal staff. We're here just for support. It would gear up if there was a truly event. This whole place would be full of people. All the emergency support functions have telephones. There's also computers at each desk so that we can communicate with the outside world in more than one way. And this whole building has its own power supply. It locks down. There's bunk beds. You can bring your kids if they're not toddlers. You can't bring your dog. But we're locked down in there. We had an interesting event when we locked down, when we thought we were going to get hit. One of the police officers, and he had a gun, was claustrophobic, and that was pretty interesting for a while. I thought I was going to have to tackle him. But we talked him down. It was okay. Twinkies were great. Twinkies were great. we had food there, but all the support functions are there, and they have the authority and the responsibility to make decisions and give support to the community. So that's what it looks like in Hillsborough County. All the metropolitan areas have a similar war room like that. You can see lists on the wall. We're computerized now, but we used to keep track of the hospital beds that way, evacuation points. We used to do it all on these white marker boards. Now we're a little more sophisticated, but my daughter will tell you I am the Bermuda Triangle of computers. So I usually say, here, put this in for me, and get one of the young guys to do it.